Miami Condo Mondays is a live podcast on the first workday of the week at 4 p.m. South Florida time. The program features former journalist and current Wall Street consultant Peter Zaleski of the Miami Condo Investing Club and former lender and veteran condo broker Jenny Huertas of CVRRealty.com. Recorded weekly in greater downtown Miami, this 1-hour discussion will provide a refreshing and sometimes controversial perspective on the state of the South Florida condo market from a pair of seasoned real estate professionals who do not always agree. The program won't tell you what to think about the South Florida condo market, but will give you something to think about before buying, selling, taking listings, or financing units. This podcast is not authorized by the Miami real estate industry and will quite possibly annoy many of its figureheads. Welcome to this week's episode of Miami Condo Mondays, broadcast live on the social media accounts of Peter Zaleski and Jenny Huertas.
Happy Monday, Miami. This is Miami Condo Mondays, a 1-hour podcast discussion about what's going on in the condo market in the Tri-County, South Florida area of Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach County. I'm Peter Zaleski. I'm a condo consultant. I'm an expert witness. I'm also the founder of the Miami Condo Investing Club. I'm joined here by my partner, Jenny Huertas. She's the broker owner of CVR Realty. Check out our website, cvrrealty.com. This is our last episode of 2025. What we're going to do is we're going to round up some of the big stories that occurred in 2025, but more importantly, it's all been preempted. Why? Because it appears as if this sell-off has finally begun in the Brickell Avenue area of greater downtown Miami. That's going to be that area from the Miami River south to the Eddie Rickenbacker Causeway. That'll be Interstate 95 east to Biscayne Bay. So Jenny and I are going to discuss it for the next hour, and near the end, we're also going to get into some of the details of what we think were some of the biggest stories that occurred in 2025. And make sure you hang out long enough because we are going to be showing you charts. We're going to be identifying the 20 condo projects where today the asking price is below what the units traded for during the summer buying season, which ended as recently as October. So big changes going on in the Brickell Avenue area market, and we're going to get into all of those details today. So Jenny Huertas, my partner, the broker owner of CVR Realty. How's it going? And happy last podcast of 2025.
Wow, I just can't believe it's just the last week of this year. It just went so fast. I just cannot even comprehend how many months we've been here and how many weeks or how many programs. We had to do the math on that one. But yeah, happy to be here and excited about what is happening next year.
You know, Jenny, we came into this podcast thinking we were going to go ahead and talk about some of maybe the 5 or 10 biggest stories that occurred in 2025 since we launched this podcast, which was back in May. But suddenly it got preempted. Why? Because I did a tour on Saturday. You joined me. We went out there. We walked about 4 miles in and around the Brickell Avenue area. As mentioned, that's the area that stretches from the Rickenbacker Causeway north to the Miami River, then Biscayne Bay west to Interstate 95. And in doing the research, Jenny, wow, shocked to see there are 20 buildings that today the asking price is below what these units traded for in these buildings back as recently as the summer, and the summer goes from May through October. Any surprises for you in seeing that? But you're in the trenches, and I'm kind of looking at the big picture. So, Jenny, what's your take on 20 buildings out of 20 projects out of 80 projects that exist in greater downtown Miami? And for what it's worth, another 20 projects are in some form of construction as we speak.
I think I am not super surprised, but I'm gladly seeing that the trend is actually going faster than I thought. I thought it was going to be after, February or whatever, but I think there are a lot of sellers that are motivated and buyers were waiting for this. So it's going to be a really busy winter for people that really want to buy in Brickell, and we're holding off on this whole year for that matter.
You know, Jenny, what was sort of interesting is taking a look at the numbers. If you kind of put together the math, summer buying season ends in October. Summer is typically the period when you close the stuff that you had found and shopped for during the winter. So normally the way it goes between November and April, people come down here for an event. They have a good time. They start thinking about maybe investing either for the immediate and or for the long term. They then start kicking the tires. They look around. They submit some offers. Typically, many of those offers are going to end up closing sometime in the summer buying season, which will be May through October. Many are done before Labor Day, which is in September in the United States. And in that September to October period, that tends to be the ramp up, sort of the beginning where you start to get some momentum, which leads you into winter, and then it just continues on and on and on. Now, Jenny, what was interesting is as of 2026, under the legislation that went into place as a result of the Surfside condo collapse back in June of 2021, buildings which were required to do these inspections, whether they are structural integrity reserve studies, which are now going to be done every 10 years, or milestone inspections, which are done at year 30, all these condo associations have to start to fund it now. They either have to start collecting reserves come January of 2026, which is effectively in a couple days, and or they need to take out a loan so they have access to the cash so they can start doing the work. And you know what that means, Jenny? That means everybody's maintenance fees are going up. That means special assessments are being put in place. And it also means that the insurance increases that have occurred, they're all starting to take hold. And I would argue that that's probably one of the reasons why suddenly we're seeing all these units come on the market, especially in and around the Brickell Avenue area, where prices have skyrocketed since 2021, when people were allowed to come to Florida. They didn't have to wear masks, and they could work from home as a result of the pandemic and all the changes that occurred back then.
Good point. Good point. I definitely think it's a huge factor. Also, people that is being in the market for a long time, like for 4, 5, 6 months, they're getting into the winter and they're not seeing any contracts or offers. So they start getting worried. And if they were thinking ahead and thinking that they would not jump out of the ship faster than anybody else, so they start getting issues, and therefore, special assessments, all that is happening in January is going to push them to the limit where they're going to let go.
Where they're going to let go. And that's a very good point. Jenny, I think where I'd like to start, why don't you tell me, do you want to start? And I want to share some charts with people. And by the way, if anybody wants to get this type of information, I'd encourage you to take our walking tours, because I pulled the numbers in anticipation of our walking tours. And then when you go on one of our walking tours, we actually give you these lists. We give you handouts of all this type of stuff. We're going to share it with you on the podcast, so you'll be able to get a glimpse of everything we're kind of looking at and what I do over the course of these tours. By the way, this Saturday at 10 o'clock, from 10 to 1 o'clock or so, we're going to be doing the Central Business District, which will be the Miami River north of the MacArthur Causeway. It'll be Biscayne Bay west to Interstate 95. What we do is we analyze the market big picture, and then we also drill down and we give you a list of all the buildings within that project or within that market, because Jenny and I are believers that you find the building you like, and once you have the building you like, then you start to pinpoint in on the units to see if they actually make sense, rather than running around looking at all these different units, and at the end of the day, you go under contract, you get the condo declaration, you get your time to review everything, and then you come to realize that the building's not going to make sense because there's some stipulation you weren't counting on. So this is a way to sort of front load it, and then lo and behold, you're able to move quickly. And what we do with the tours is we give you that big overall picture. We teach how to analyze buildings. You walk the market so you can figure out some of the difficulties or maybe some of the advantages of certain buildings. And it just it prepares you for going in and ultimately doing what you're trying to do, which is either to buy a condo and or maybe you're on the listing side and you want to know if you should take on a listing. Should you burn that $2,500 it's going to take for that 6-month listing in anticipation of being able to sell it? Because if you can't sell that unit, you just pissed away $2,500 plus. And that $2,500, by the way, goes for videos, for social media, for drone footage, for ads, for all this type of stuff. Plus, you have all that wasted time when you're going and you're showing the unit, and it's ultimately never going to sell. So you got to go, you got to pay for the valet, you got to drive down there, you got to deal with the traffic. It's all the back and forth. It takes you an hour to get there. And then what happens? The customer walks in for 5 minutes and they say, yeah, it's not going to necessarily work. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to educate and inform people, whether they're on the buy side and or they are on the sell side, as to what are the real particulars of the marketplace. Jenny, am I getting that right? Find the building, and then from there you ultimately find a unit?
Yeah, absolutely. And the beauty of the walking tour is that you see the quality. You can compare pairs to pairs. Is much more helpful for everybody, for professionals, for customers, for public in general that is actually curious about what is happening in this market. Because even me, even Peter, we still learn every day. It's like a learning experience every time we go out there and we take a look to these buildings. Even if we do know them for years, there is something happening. It's they're fixing the balcony. Suddenly, this one is disqualified from our list, and things like that you won't be able to see online or in the paper. And this data that you get in the tour guides is super powerful because Peter pointed to the buildings that may be a good deal and they highlight them or they make them bold there. So it's easier for you to find them after the fact. So I definitely will recommend this tour to anybody.
And because you're recommending it, I'm going to go ahead and put out a shameless plug. Anybody who is interested in taking one of these tours, go to miamicondoclub.eventbrite.com. This is what it's going to look like. And then as you scroll down, you will see all our upcoming tours. So we're doing the Central Business District this Saturday. We tend to do it Saturdays at 10 o'clock, 10 to about 1 o'clock or so. The following Saturday, we're going to be doing the Edgewater, Midtown, Wynwood area, what we call Biscayne Boulevard corridor. That'll include Wynwood, Edgewater, Midtown. You're going to wander around. You're going to get a good sense. What's the difference? What makes sense? What doesn't make sense? And then we will follow up on the 17th of January. We're going to do Brickell Avenue area again. So if you like what you're hearing from this today's podcast and maybe you want to go out there and touch it and feel it and understand it all, put it on your calendar. January the 17th, we'll be doing that again at 10 o'clock. It's a walking tour. Walk about 4 miles. We do it at a moderate pace. We have stops along the way, give you an opportunity to ask questions, take pictures, give you handouts. It's almost like a class. I don't know if I want to say college class, but it's almost like taking a class for 3 hours and going in there and getting a real good understanding of what's going on in the marketplace. And also, too, we got some bus tours planned. In February, we're going to be doing a bus tour of Miami Beach. So we'll take you in and around Miami Beach, Bell Harbor, Surfside, Bay Harbor Islands. And in March, we'll be doing Fort Lauderdale, downtown Fort Lauderdale on the beach. And then we'll wrap up the bus seasons April the 4th with a bus tour of Greater Downtown Miami. So we take people out. It's about a 28-seater bus. And if you're interested in doing it, I'd encourage you to do so. So if you're not into walking, maybe out for the bus tour. So, but one thing to remind you of, if you are a member of the Miami Condo Investing Club, you get a discount. Tour tickets walking are going to be $65 and they're $130 for the bus. If you are a club member, you basically take $15 off the walking, so it comes out to $50, or you take $30 off the bus and it comes into $100. Basically, the tour is probably worth it just for the list, Jenny, is what I would argue, because it's going to help everybody understand the market real quickly. We give you a lot of interesting information, including the addresses of these properties. A lot of times when you're looking around, you're being told these are the only buildings that exist. But in reality, there's a hell of a lot more out there. It's just many people on the sell side don't want you to be aware of them because they're probably going to be better deals than maybe some of the stuff they're showing you. Why? Because people eat what they kill in this industry. Therefore, the higher the price, the bigger the commission. So, but when you work on the buy side, like Jenny does, the idea is to try to identify what the best value is on behalf of a buyer, because the fiduciary is to the buyer. All the sell side people, their fiduciary is to the seller. That means they got to get the highest price possible. At least that's the way it kind of works down here in terms of the rules of engagement. Jenny, am I missing anything related to that?
No, it's perfect. It's a great deal. You guys, Peter does this list as a consultant. It's going to cost you a lot. So definitely a good deal. Just take advantage of it.
And you get your steps, and we have a blast talking about the marketplace. If you got a dark sense of humor, I think you'll probably like some of the cynical perspectives we have. I'll tell you about the projects. I'll tell you about the developers. I'll tell you about who went to jail, who got out of jail, what kid took over from the old man or the father. So we give you all of the sort of color involved with it. So that's it for the shameless plug, Jenny. Let's go ahead and get into our event. Jen, why don't we start off talking about, let's talk about the 20 buildings where you actually see the units are priced today below what they traded for during the summer buying season, which would have been May through October. So what are we talking, 2 months or so? And suddenly people are starting to sell off or trying to sell off in these buildings, Jenny. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull up that list and we will get started with that. And then after that, we're going to go year over year over year. And we're going to show you why the sell-off is actually underway. So it's not just people cutting prices, but they're actually, we're seeing a tremendous drop-off in transactions, as well as a significant fall in pricing, average condo sales pricing in the Brickell Avenue area. And why did it pop up now? It popped up because we were doing a tour and I wanted to go ahead and update the information, and I figured I would take a look at it all. And therefore, this is what we stumbled upon. This is always how it works with data. Once you start digging, then you find stuff and find stuff and find stuff. And before you know it, all the pieces kind of fall into place because you're seeing stuff and you're feeling it, but you're not really sure. Just like earlier this year, Jenny said it feels like 2007. So we went ahead, we ran the numbers, and then we ran them past AI. And everybody agreed that Jenny was right. It was 2007. Now, she didn't have the numbers initially when she said it, but she could feel it. And then lo and behold, the numbers sort of substantiated what she was saying. And that's a lot of ways, that's a lot of times how this stuff sort of works. So Jenny, let me go ahead and pull up this list. And again, this is going to be a list that we shared with people who attended the tour last Saturday when we did it of the Greater Downtown Miami, of the Brickell Avenue area of Greater Downtown Miami. So this is a bonus if you are watching online, you're checking this out, you're going to get a sense what we're looking at. Let me just do some rough spacing. Maybe I can make this a little bit smaller. There we go. Fit it on the screen. There we go. All right. So we're going to get a good sense here. So what we're looking at here, why don't we start off at the top? So in Greater Downtown Miami, there's about 204 condo projects. Now, some of these projects are going to have more than one building, like the Icon Brickell, which has 3. You're going to have a grand total of about 59,000 units. Of that, we currently have about 2,750 on the market today. Average ask is 1.4 a door, $877 a foot. And they've been on the market for 181 days and counting without getting a contract. Jenny, how long does it take once you go under contract to actually transact that unit? So if they're starting at 180 today, which is 6 months, Jenny, if best case scenario, these units were to go under contract today, how long would it take till the units actually transacted?
Yeah, minimum 30 days and average would be 60 days.
So 60 days. So that means these people are, so if you list your condo today on average, you could be looking at 8 months of being on the market without, before you actually transact it. Jenny, that could be a problem if you're a listing agent. If you got a 6-month listing, you wasted $2,500 in fees just to sort of get the thing up to par. You wasted all that time driving back and forth and showing the unit, and it takes 8 months. Therefore, the original listing agent is probably not going to get it unless they get an extension of the listing. It'll be the second listing agent that probably makes the money, no?
Yes, but if you have you set up a sort of protection. When you do the listing agreement, you are protected if the property goes under contract before the expiration of the listing. You have 30 to 60 days, depending on the closing, as a protection.
Interesting. Okay, Jenny, Brickell Avenue area, right now there's about just under 1,200 units on the market. There's about 29,442 or so. This is going to include existing as well as those that are currently under construction, about 101 buildings. So if you look at the math here really quickly, basically 50% or so of the units as well as the number of projects are going to be in the Brickell Avenue area, which again is the river down to the Rickenbacker. It'll be 95 east to Biscayne Bay. Average asking price is $1.3 million. The units that traded, Jenny, in the summer, which would have been May through October, they traded for an average of $809,000. Overall in Greater Downtown Miami, they traded for $932,000. So it's actually a little bit cheaper in Brickell Avenue area for a condo than it is overall in Greater Downtown Miami. And the Brickell Avenue condos, they traded for about $655 a foot. They took 110 days in order to transact. Anything you want to mention about the Greater Downtown Miami market or the Brickell Avenue market before we get into the 20 buildings where the sell-off is underway?
Since Brickell Avenue also includes a part that is older, they have more vintage condos that they have in downtown Miami, and probably that shows in the stats as far as the pricing. But being Brickell being the most desirable of them because of the walkability, and but they have a lot of vintage condos there.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jenny. It's a great point. And let me remind everybody, you're watching this live, so you're getting access to all of this. Once this is done, we're going to go ahead. We're going to put some quick edits in there primarily for template. Then we're going to make it available on demand. If you go to watch it on demand, you're going to need to be a member of the club because they will be behind a paywall. So I'd encourage you, tune in every day at 4 o'clock when we're doing these podcasts. Otherwise, become a club member, and you can kind of watch this on demand as you see fit. Jenny, you ready? Here we go. The 20 buildings in the Brickell Avenue area that are currently for sale for a price that is below what they traded for in the summer buying season. These are simply alphabetical ordered. These are not ranked based on price discount.